Greetings to all. As promised, this is the second video for week 6. As I said before, I will not be making you look at another video on two videos to make up for the two classes. I'll just be doing one. So we're looking, as we saw last class, we kind of saw the big picture beliefs that help us understand morality, and to especially understand morality as we are seeing it from this class from a Christian or specifically Catholic perspective. Those beliefs are not necessarily the same as faith, but they do help us understand what is meant by the theological virtue of faith. But we need to first understand a little bit about the theological virtues. You recall when looking at started looking at the virtues, we saw the cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude are those that are exhibited, are practiced by all, as far as the basics of what needs to be done in life. These theological virtues are far bigger, are far more. What is meant by that? Well, we mean that these virtues have not only God as their object, but also have God as the one who gives them. Why do we say that? We say that because whereas the other virtues are those that can, as it were, be discerned merely by reason, not saying they can't be understood in a faith basis, but can be understood by the use of reason. These theological virtues are those that are given specifically by God, and are given in a very Christian context, especially within the Catholic system of the sacraments. So what needs to be understood about these theological virtues is, yes, they have a specific Christian understanding, but they are also help us to understand and to practice what it means to be a full human person, and that is a human person in relationship with God. As we saw last class, God makes us to be in communion with God. And so if we avoid that, if we reject that, we are not living the full life of a Christian person, of a human person, let alone a Christian person. We can see it also in this sense that we talked before about everything that Jesus does ultimately is meant to help us, because we can't do it on our own. That's the biggest key to understand. We cannot do this on our own. So these virtues are those that are more infused rather than natural virtue. What I mean by that? So infused virtue means that it comes from God, and it is given by God. God's grace, what we call His divine help, His grace, helps us to be able to do it. Whereas natural virtue is that which we receive merely by reason alone. So there can be a natural temperance. There can also be an infused practice of temperance. In fact, the liturgical season that Catholics are practicing now started during this week, the season of Lent. We are called to practice fasting and abstinence. That can be a very natural virtue. There are plenty of people who have started doing, for example, meatless Mondays, which is something that continues to be promoted. But there is also the infused virtue of being able to practice fasting and abstinence that is seen not just in general practice, but even in sometimes the great practice of some of the holy people, the saints. We must remember also that these theological virtues are both gift and virtue. What I mean by that is that, first of all, they are gifts. They are given by God. So they are not something. Their origin is from God. Again, going back to an example of infused. So they are gifts that are given to one who becomes a Christian, to one who receives baptism and enters into the life of Christ in the church. But they are also virtue in the sense that they are habits that can and must be practiced, performed, done by human persons. They are not, they are in that kind of infused versus natural sense. They are greatly infused. God gives them to us. God gives that to us, but we must practice it. We must do it. Otherwise, that the gift is useless. Just think the example of the gift of any of the gifts that you received when you were a kid at Christmas. What's the point of having that gift if you only play with it for a week and then it just goes in the box somewhere and done? If you continue to practice it and play it, and enjoy it, there's a great virtue to that. Just like any instrument, you may have been given the gift of that instrument, piano, guitar, whatnot, but if you do not practice it, it's useless. It is helpless for you. So we're going to start by looking at the virtue of faith. That is the virtue that we're going to start to look at today in this class. Now, how do we define what faith is? In this sense of the virtue of faith, the practice of faith, the habit of faith, it is, simply put, the act of freely assenting to the truth God has revealed. Virtue of faith is the act of freely assenting to the truth God has revealed. That is the first thing that needs to be understood about all of this, is that faith is not, often by outsiders, faith is seen as in some way being a, what's the word? Faith is seen as being, as kind of just, as merely believing a story or believing something you're told. In a sense, there is some truth to that, but there is a far deeper meaning to that. We say that faith is giving our assent, our yes, our acknowledgement. We say this is true to that which we believe and profess has been revealed by God. These are not things that are just, that are merely just handed on. Their ultimate source, their ultimate foundation is God. And so we freely ascend and assent to that truth. Faith is the means whereby that kind of looking back on the previous lesson, that we answer, or we seek to answer, the big picture questions. Why does anything exist? What's the point of all of this? What's all of it? So looking at those big picture questions versus kind of the practical ones, what do I need to do? How can I do this? How should I act? How should I be? It's, as we talked before, that law of worship, law of praying, law of believing, law of living. It starts with faith. Now, this definition I give is the Catholic definition, as defined in the most recent Catholic Catechism. Merriam-Webster defines faith as firm belief in something for which there is no proof, or complete trust. So, firm belief in something for which there is no proof, or the alternate definition is complete trust. That's from Merriam-Webster. So obviously not a Catholic source. But we must understand this because we all practice some form of faith. We all do. We all have done it in some way or the other. The first way we have done it is in our parents, right? We believed and trusted everything they told us until we found some reason to either doubt what they were saying or to lose faith. There's a difference between kind of disagreeing, difference between doubting, and or losing faith. We have done that with teachers. We have done that with authority figures of every type. Um, we trust, we have faith that what our teachers of any level teach us is true. And until we somehow find out otherwise, we believe everything. Let's be honest. How many of us have actually done the proofs necessary to absolutely prove everything true that we learned in science or mathematics, to actually verify anything that we learned in history or social studies is true? Um, you know, how do you know, how do we even know? Um, how do we even know there is something on the other side of the world? Have we actually experienced it? Have we actually, have you been to China or Japan or the Philippines? Have you even been to California? Um, have you been to Mexico? Have have you been to have you been to oh, what's going on? Been to Laurel County, Kentucky, or been down to Owen County, Kentucky? We have to exhibit faith because we do not apprehend truth completely and totally in an instant. We don't know all the truth either. So we have to practice some sort of faith. Now, of course, I want to distinguish faith from superstition. And this needs to be understood because um, the distinction here, because first of all, some will just say faith is superstitious, and that's uh, a gross misunderstanding of both faith and superstition. Superstition, classically understood, and especially in the Catholic context, is the understanding of the attribution of a magical power to something. It could be a certain practice, it could be a certain object. Um, Charms, omens, talismans. Um, what I mean by that is that superstition is the practice of uh, uh, is if you do this routine or if you use this object in a certain way, it will have this effect. Um, we see it a lot in sports. The famous rally cap, for example, that take the baseball hat and flip it inside out and put it on. That's the rally cap. That if you do that, if you practice that, it's not just the object; it's a practice as well. That it is supposed to help you rally from being behind. Um, Many athletes are very superstitious creatures, um, especially if they get on a streak of some sort. They will continue to do the same thing, or if they're in a slump, if they're losing a lot or they're not performing well, they will change things. They will do things different to get themselves out of it. That is not what faith is. Faith is not that. Many people can be superstitious, but can also be people of faith. Um, and this can happen with Christians. This can happen with non-Christians. So we need to understand and delineate superstition from faith. Faith is very much an act of the will, but is our assent to the truth, whereas superstition is very much doing this or having this thing, and it will do what it needs to do. That's not faith. Faith is ultimately concerned with answering that big picture question: what is true? What is good? and all those that flow from it. Why does anything exist? Who made it? What made it? Why is it here? And especially the one that plagues human beings the most. What happens after death? Is there more to this life than just this? Is this it, or is there something more? Um, those are the major questions that faith asks, or should I say, answers in all of this. We'll look at some more in the next class. The relationship of faith and reason. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, because there's a lot to understand in the context of faith and reason. Ultimately, we believe as Catholics, and this is probably something I would say more true for Catholics than maybe some Christians, not all Christians, that there is ultimately no divide or no battle, I'll put it that way, or conflict between faith and reason. We'll see that in talking about it next class, but there is ultimately no division or no conflict between faith and reason. Reason is what we are able to do as human beings. Faith is what is given to us by God. We can and we should use reason in conjunction with faith, but also use faith in conjunction with reason. But we'll look into that more in the next class. For the Catholic, the ultimate end of faith and reason is understanding, and understanding ultimately pursues truth. We're concerned with truth. What is true? What is right? What is good? There are two ways of practicing faith. This gets into kind of technical language. The first way is called in Latin fides qua, or faith by which we believe. That's kind of the way to understand that. Fides qua, faith by which we believe. And this is, as it were, the act of believing, which you could call subjective faith. So this is in a sense the kind of virtuous part of faith. In the sense of virtue is a habit that inclines us toward the good. So there is first of all, exercising the faith by which we live. That what I do then is to say that all of this which is true, and which comes to us from God through reason, through revelation, through through any source of truth, I believe is true. So this is the personal side of faith, as it were. I, as a practicing Christian, as a practicing Catholic, I say these things are true. That is my subjective faith, because it is me exercising and practicing faith. That I say these things, such as the mystery of the Trinity, Jesus Christ being God and man, Jesus Christ being raised from the dead, the church as the body of Christ, and the vessel, the instrument of the sign of his grace. That I believe all those things are true. So I am exercising subjective faith. Whereas the other part is fides quae, and that is the faith which we believe. So we can describe this as the tenets of belief, or objective faith. So I in exercising fides qua, I do believe that I practice that which I believe. What is it I believe? There's the fides quae. The fides quae, in my particular context, in my particular um, realm, is everything that is professed and declared by the Catholic Church. Um, you know, uh, One God, the Trinity of persons, um, the incarnation of Jesus Christ, being God and man, his death and his resurrection, his ascension into heaven, and the church as the visible sign of his union, of his help, of his grace. So the fides quae that I exercise is the Catholic faith. Fides qua is that I believe it. That's how we can begin to understand it. Um, yeah. Because ultimately, what the human person desires and wants is truth. We want the truth. We think we can handle the truth, even if some others say that we can't handle the truth. But we believe and we think that these things, we want the truth. We want the truth about everything. And there are multiple levels, or you could say multiple shades of truth. But truth is ultimately that which is or is not. Saying that which is, or that, understanding, apprehending, saying that which is or is not. So, I exist. That at the time of this taping, who knows what happens after this? At the time of this taping, I do exist. That is true. There will come a point that I will no longer exist, at least in this realm of among the living, so that will not be true. But that will have been true at some point, unless you believe I am an AI robot, which good luck with that. So, um, it is not summer at the time of this taping. If I open up the window and look outside, you will most clearly see snow. Maybe I'll make you practice some faith in doing that. But believe me, there's plenty of snow. We want truth. We want to understand and to believe. We want to understand and believe in the truth. We all want the truth. The question is, how do we find it? How do we pursue it? Or, better question, can we? And that's been one that, although not an old question, but has come very much into vogue in recent decades, in recent centuries, especially with the so-called Enlightenment. The question of whether one can find or receive truth. Um, so there are, as it were, these. What am I thinking of? There are these ideas about truth, as it were, that help us to understand the possibility or the actuality towards it. And these things, there's also that which goes kind of against the concept of truth. There's, first of all, doubt. And doubt, which is, no truth to apprehend, right? True and total doubt, which seems an oxymoron. True doubt is that there is no truth. So that one will say there is, it is the practice of nihilism. There's nothing to find. There's nothing really there. There's no ultimate truth. There's no ultimate answers. So everything is just kind of a construct. Philosophers such as Nietzsche, to a lesser extent, Kant and Descartes, practice some forms of this doubt. Um, there is also the concept of pragmatism, and that is just a practical truth. So there is truth found in kind of the practices, as it were, but not necessarily a permanent, abiding, lasting truth. Um, it only it's only for a time, and then it sinks back into nothing. So kind of temporarily in things, but nothing beyond. Um, there is also kind of Gnosticism, uh, which says, kind of only. I think I spelled that right. Only a kind of theoretical truth. Um, that not Gnosticism is kind of the practice of saying that there is some deeper truth, but it's only those who are select or in the know. This is the classic sort of the conspiracy theory field. It's like only us who have the true knowledge can be able to identify and to know it. Others have basically this other truth that is given to them that keeps them going. But Gnosticism is, those who are in the know really know what's going on. Have you heard the good word about the second gunman on the grassy knoll, or about the 5G that is spreading the COVID, things like that, right? That's all very Gnostic type of truth. There's also, in the end, really not, it's Friday, so that's probably why I can't spell. There's also the idea of relativism, that finally, kind of truth for each person. So what is true for me is not necessarily true for you. Um, so as to say, there's a shifting. There's no single basis in truth. It's merely just what the individual, I want to believe. And there's no way that I can or would impose that, force that on you. Um, so, what do I want to say with that? So then, what happens is we then have, that we'll just say, it's an avoidance of conflict. It's an avoidance of even discussion. It's like, well, you believe what you believe. I'll believe what I believe. We'll all be fine, and it's all good. And the end. Amen. That is not a that's not of a Christian understanding of truth. We ultimately, in practicing faith, we say that the truth is bigger than myself. It's not just me. The important thing is not that I believe, but that I believe the truth. That what I believe by practicing faith is that I believe in what is the truth. Why? Because it ultimately comes from the source of truth, from He who is truth Himself, which is God. And that is not something that is that can be relativized. It cannot be something that is doubted ultimately. But it is something to which I must give my assent. That I must go almost, as it were, kind of out of myself, out of perhaps my limited knowledge, limited understanding, limited application, and be able to apply it, and be able to, not apply, to accept it, even if I don't completely grasp it. And we'll look at that some more when we look into faith and reason, how faith and reason work together. But it is essential to understand that faith is pulling us out of our own, perhaps limited understanding and knowledge of all things, and opening up for us, pulling back the veil, not in a Gnostic sense down here, just, well, those who know. No, pulling back the veil and saying, here is the truth. Here is what's to be believed. Which is hence why Christians, and of course, in particular, the Catholic Church, are so concerned with spreading and proclaiming this gospel. Why? Because we believe it's the truth. It's the truth for everyone. It's not the truth just for us, or it's not the truth just for a particular race or a particular people or a particular place. It is the truth because it is about God, who is truth. So, going then from that, we must then strive to live out and profess all of this by believing it, fides qua, subjective faith, and by believing what is revealed, the fides quae, the objective faith. This is then how all of that happens, comes into being. So this then is kind of our simple understanding of the theological virtues and beginning to look at the virtue of faith. So next time we're going on the class on Monday, if there's no more snow, God willing. Next time, what we will do then is look more deeply into the relationship between faith and reason. Talk a little bit as well about revelation. What is revealed? What is this? How is this truth revealed to us? And that's an important aspect. We need to understand how it's revealed, why it's revealed, so that then we can receive it and apply it. Remember we said last lesson, lex orandi, law of worship, is the law of believing, is the law of living. So if you have any questions or concerns about this material or anything else, as always, feel free to message me. Be sure to work on the participation assignment, which I will be making due for Tuesday to give you some extra time to, if you haven't already, to watch this video. But otherwise, make sure to catch up on the material and to read the material for next week. And until then, I will see you later. Have a blessed day.